Welcome back to the ManTFup podcast. I'm KimmyB.
And Lenny.
That's right. We're sitting here hanging out in the man cave. Now, before we go any further, you know the drill. Please like, subscribe, share, and follow basically any and everywhere. As you're watching, if something comes to mind and you want to leave a comment, go ahead and do so. Make sure you are following us on TikTok, the Gram, Twitter, all of that good stuff as well, because we'd love to pull from the comments and the interactions there. Lots of times that turns into whatever the next podcast episode is going to be.
Pretty much.
But Len, we're going to get right into it today. I came in to the Fabulous Man Cave, and we immediately started talking about, parenting. I had a situation that happened to me over the President's Day weekend, and I actually needed to call some of my parental figures in my life, because obviously I am not a parent, for advice. Nobody was really that helpful. But that's just a testament to where we're at in 2023, right? There was a young girl, on President's Day, obviously there's no school. And I didn't realize that I didn't have to go to work. So I happened to be driving home fairly early in the morning, which would have been,
surprisingly little traffic.
Yeah, get to school time. And there was a young girl standing out in front of an elementary school, clearly in the same boat as me, not realizing she did not have school that day. And obviously neither did her parents or whoever allowed her to walk to school, because here in Florida, a lot of kids do walk to their neighborhood school. And I felt so bad because she didn't seem to have a cell phone on her. She looked very confused. She was probably 8 or 9 years old. And all I could think of was, I want to help her, but I didn't know the proper protocol, right? Because obviously we've had our friend Kendra in here talking about sex trafficking. We know what a serious situation it is, particularly in South Florida. Also, stranger danger. We're big on advocating that parents make sure their children are aware, make sure that their children are vigilant. So all I'm thinking is, how do I help this girl without seeming like a complete creep? And I realized there was absolutely no way to do that.
Yeah, and you ended up seeming like a complete creep.
1,000. Everything that I tried to do just went very wrong. But I will say this: the young girl, as she had started to walk home, basically I drove by her once. Almost went home and then decided, let me just go check on her again. If she had still been sitting out in front of the school, I would have tried to pull up, but it was a busy street. So there was nowhere for me to pull over and approach her in a non kind of threatening way. Mm-hmm. Anything I was going to do, I was either going to have to roll up in my big car with the tinted windows and put my, window down hey, do you want to use my phone? It just, everything just seemed so creepy. And by the time I drove by her a second time, she was kind of already walking away from the school. And she seemed not scared or anything, but I ended up pulling, over a little further ahead of her to not frighten her. And when I finally did put my car in park and got out, she had busted a right so fast. So, two things came to mind. One, I definitely scared her. And two, she was at least aware enough of her surroundings, I think, to see that this car was pulling over and to be like, yeah, you know what? Let me go ahead and
go the other way.
Yeah, go the other way. I felt absolutely horrible because I'm pretty sure from this moment forward, she will for sure tell everybody she almost got kidnapped. That is going to be the story. Although maybe she got some Jackson's ice cream out of it or something.
Who knows?
Later on that day. But the other thing was I didn't want to call the cops because I didn't want DCFS to get involved if parents had just honestly made a mistake, and that was something that the co-host of my radio show was adamantly in favor of. Laz wanted me to call the cops. He was call the cops, let them handle it. And I was kind of just well, I don't necessarily agree with that because it wasn't an emergency situation. It didn't feel that way. Like I said, she didn't seem frightened. I was probably the most frightening part of her morning. But on the flip side of it, parents have so much going on in their lives. And Laz was when I tell you, had no sympathy for these parents. It's their fault. They should be aware. F that. If DCFS gets them. And I was just kind of okay, well, that's felt a little judgmental because, things happen. I know kids get left at school. There's miscommunication between parents on whose day it is to pick up and take to sports or whatever. So I don't know.
There's a lot of kids that walk to school.
Mm-hmm. Well, he was very much against that too. He was 8 or 9 and walking to school by themselves. That's crazy.
There's a lot of that down here.
For sure.
I walked to school by myself from kindergarten.
I mean, I know.
I was 5.
I know kids that take public transportation to school, which seems very outrageous to me.
Yes.
I'm an adult and wouldn't get on a city bus. I'm just saying.
I mean, listen, it's all what you're used to, but this goes a lot to parenting nowadays, and the fear of people getting involved in any situation.
Well, if that had been one of your kids at 8 or 9 years old, right? Would you have wanted a stranger to help them? Like, would you have wanted me? Like, you know what I'm saying? Because that was what we discussed on the radio. I was kind of like, parents, how should I have handled this situation?
Well, first off, it's clear the parent did not drop her off. Because if someone dropped her
She would have realized.
she would have realized
Facts.
there's absolutely nobody here.
Yeah.
Okay, so she didn't get dropped off, which means she routinely walks to school. So, no, if it looks like a normal situation and the kid came on the wrong day, then the kid knows how to get home. You know, it's a normal thing. And is it weird for an 8-year-old girl to be walking down the street? Yeah, she could have lived right behind the school.
Yeah,
you know. She could have been on autopilot.
Yeah.
Her mom already left for work at 7:30 and she walked to school at 7:45 not knowing. You know? I mean, there's too many variables. But if the kid was not uncomfortable or freaking out.
Yeah. Like sitting there crying.
Yeah,
and like
I mean,
yeah.
Then no, she didn't need any help.
Okay.
It was normal. And you know, did I make my kids? No, my kids don't go to a school that's close enough. But if they did, they would have walked, or I don't know if it would have been at 5 years old, but, you know, I mean, I grew up in an area where it was a closed-in neighborhood, and the school was in the neighborhood. I grew up right on Ives Dairy in 95.
I mean, my ex gave his son a literal bus pass when I think he was 12. Like, you know, he had one grandparent that lived in, like, Coral Springs, and the other lived in Homestead, and he was like, listen, we ain't driving back and forth all the time. You want to come down and hang out with your cousins? Here you go. Bus pass, unlimited rides. Figure it out, buddy. And that was how he was raised, though. And he was like, and he was an extremely independent young teenager. You know what I'm saying? And it was like, you're not going to be spoon-fed your whole life. And he wanted him to be aware, and he wanted him to be streetwise, and he wanted him to be able to get around, like no matter what the situation was, because who knows, you might need that in high school. If you have a friend that you go out with and all of a sudden they decide to start drinking and you don't have a ride home, you may need to take the bus. Or what if that car breaks down? Or, you know, it's definitely, you know, again, I was very proud of the fact that the young girl was aware of her surroundings. Like, that was my positive takeaway from the situation. But I was also, on the flip side, sad because that's the world that we live in 2023. Like, not only was I aware of it, but as young kids, they were aware of it. Like, I feel like during my childhood, if somebody would have rolled up, like if I had had a flat tire riding a bike home from a friend's house, if somebody would have rolled up, like, that wouldn't have been looked at crazy. Like, I grew up in the super burbs. There was a farm on my street. Like, we were the type that we were out in the summertime. As soon as the sun was up, we were out on our bikes, and we didn't come back until literally after dark. And nobody really thought twice of it, you know?
Yes.
And it's sad to me that and that was, again, that doesn't exist in cities the same way that it does in very kind of rural, suburban areas.
I think it's the same in cities. I still think it's, you know, Saturday
Your
morning.
wife would
Saturday
never.
morning, the parents kick you out of the house, and you don't come home till dark.
The conversation, no. Very different. Like, I've had a conversation about this with your wife, and she is literally like, find my phone. She is in the business tracking. And like,
yes, the kids nowadays we're more aware of where they are. I mean, I don't necessarily like my kids to take Ubers, but I mean, in a dire situation, they probably would. But you know, it's all relative to how you're brought up and what situation you're in, or your parents.
Yeah. But it's funny because the other side of that, like, and to go back to Kendra, remember, she's very anti cell phones and social media and things like anti-social. She's very aware, but when it comes to her kids, like, no cell phones. If they need a phone, they can use hers. They're always going to be with somebody. And I know that she would never be in a situation where she didn't know that they had no school. But it kind of made me think, like, okay, you know, her kid would have never had a phone at 8. But in that situation, it probably would have been beneficial. But on the other side, we were discussing it, and had she had a phone, she may not have been as aware of my action,
I mean,
right?
Listen, that from everything you described, that little girl knew exactly what she was doing.
Yeah.
She just didn't know there wasn't school then. But she knew how to get home. She knew how to get to school. She had a routine, and she knew to watch out for creeps rolling up on her.
I feel
which
I feel like I
which,
want to
you
go
know,
to the school and like do like a present and be like, hi, whoever the little girl with the puffs is. Like, I promise you, I was just trying to help. Like, I
I'm
felt
sure you're going to hear it because the story's on the radio.
so bad. But no, I mean, I do. Like, I just wonder though, because one of my listeners called in and she said a similar situation had happened to her at a park, because she was basically like, Kimmy B, A, I think you did the right thing. B, I would have helped in that situation. I would have walked up to the girl, offered her a cell phone, and she had a similar situation happen at a park, and she was there with her son, and there was a little boy that was there, and clearly there had been miscommunication over a sports practice, and literally like the parents were able to come and get him, but the next day they were like, point out the mom who helped you or whatever, and they were like, thank you so much, because it would have they were like, he would have been here for hours, because we wouldn't have come back to pick him up until obviously well after after practice was over, and we had no idea what was going on. So, again, it's kind of like, I think it comes down to the parenting style, because some parents would be like, call the cops. Others would be like, don't you dare call the cops on my kid, no matter what. You know what I'm saying? So I don't know. It's just, it's crazy. So if you're watching right now, please, in your opinion, go in the comments. Let me know what you would like a stranger to do in that situation if, your child was...
Yeah, it's again a double-edged sword, because you know that you want to teach your kids not to talk to strangers.
Yeah.
And then your friend walking up, that's, the kid feels comfortable with the parent walking up.
Well, no. We talked about it.
It's a tough call.
Well, as a woman, that's what I was talking to the mom that I finally got a hold of in the morning, and she was like, it's so crazy, because there was a time when, as a woman, you would have been less threatening, right? Like, you would have been the person that you would want to go up. Like, Lenny, you would not approach an 8-year-old girl. If anything, you'd probably ask Miranda to go do it, or you'd have your wife or something like that.
Whatever.
Just because we were taught that, unfortunately, the creeps were guys. Like, you always had to be on the lookout for that. And now when we talk about sex trafficking, oftentimes there's a female component to the recruiting process. There are women that are just as likely to snatch you up and
I'll tell you what, though. Me personally, if I saw a child in distress by themselves, I wouldn't hesitate to talk to that child or to try and help that child, or you don't come near me. Just give me your parents' phone number. I'll call them myself.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't hesitate if I felt that child was in distress.
Yeah.
This girl didn't seem like she was in distress. So, but in a second, I'm not scared of what a kid is going to think, or if I'm going to scare them. It doesn't matter if I'm going to scare them. I know myself I'm not going to do anything. So I wouldn't hesitate. And, this also goes to the whole parenting thing, I think, is what this whole discussion today is about, is I think there's a lot of issues in the allowing parents to parent their child the way they feel they should be able to.
Well, and not passing judgment on them either. Like I said, that was something that came up in our conversation on the radio, where I was like, that's a very judgy approach to the situation, right? Like, everybody if you choose to allow your child to walk to school every day, that doesn't make you a shitty parent.
No.
You know what I'm saying? And like, the person that I was having the conversation with was clearly 1000% against a child walking to school by themselves. And I'm like, that used to be the thing that your parent would throw in your face. Oh, you're mad about having to walk to the school, like to the bus stop. I used to have to walk 5 miles in a hurricane to get to school. Like that was the thing that your parent would lord over your head. So I don't know where we all of a sudden got so anti-independence. You know what I'm saying?
Well, I mean, again, it boils down to which we know that bad things have always happened to kids forever. So it's not that there's anything new. It's just now we hear about it happening everywhere where we're at. When we were kids, we didn't hear about anything but what happened in a 10-mile radius of where we lived. Now we hear about everything around the world. So, yeah, did it only happen once in this 10-mile radius in 5 years? Yeah, but multiply that by the size of the earth, and it happens 1,000 times a day. You know, there's some kind of child issues.
Yeah.
So everybody is now hypersensitive
Mm-hmm.
to it. You know, I mean, I have a problem with, people not being able to discipline their kids the way they want to. I have a problem with all of that because it's, who says what's right and what's wrong? There's no, my parents got their ass beat with whatever the parent could find,
Mm-hmm.
My mom's from the hills of Kentucky, and they used to get
Like a switch.
a switch, yeah, and tear their asses up.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I was paddled in school.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. I think the lack of consequences
Mm-hmm.
for children is much
More detrimental.
more detrimental.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to have long-term effects on, and the consequences could be a myriad of different things. It's going to depend on the child.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Miranda has a healthy fear of everything.
Mm-hmm.
So, she has a fear of getting bad grades, and
Mm-hmm.
so punishment for Miranda might not be a spanking. It might be, there's you have to kind of pick your battles.
Do you think that I think that where people get concerned, though, is the murkiness of that. When you start allowing, discipline, but now you have a disciplinarian who may also be an alcoholic, and then it starts to cross the line. Like, do you know what I'm saying? Like, obviously, because there's abuse. There's a difference.
Yes,
there's a very
yes.
big difference between discipline and abuse. And I think there's also
Correct.
a very fine line between those two things. And I think there's a lot of parents who believe in discipline, but also have very, very solid beliefs on who should be disciplining their, you know what I'm saying? Like, that's always an interesting conversation too.
Yes.
Like, who has the right to discipline your child, because there's some folks out there that are like, listen, if we live in a neighborhood, it takes a village, honey. And literally every parent, like, some people grew up in those kind of communities where I don't want to say anybody's parent could give you a whap on the butt, but almost anybody's parent could give you a whap on the butt. Try that in 2023.
My best friend's mother, I tell you, I credit her with disciplining me more than my own mother did.
Really?
Absolutely. Absolutely. If it wasn't for her, I would have been 10 times worse than I am. But this also goes to the story the other day that what I was telling you earlier about the guy who made his child walk to school in 36-degree weather, 5 miles. Again, probably an 8 or 9, 10-year-old. Because he was getting dragged, and some people were cheering, some people were dragging him.
The dad who made the child do this.
The dad who made the child do this, and he made her do it because she had been disciplined on the bus twice for bullying other kids.
Wow.
So he clearly said, "All right, you want to be an asshole to other kids? No problem. I'm not driving you to school. You're walking to school." That now. I'm sure there's a bunch of parents out there, a bunch of these helicopter moms that are shaking in their boots right now, going, "That's abuse."
Mm-hmm.
Why is it abuse? Why is it abuse? Because you're teaching your child a lesson, a life lesson?
Well, and he followed her. And he followed her to school.
Yes.
I'm just saying he made sure she was good, in the sense of that she
Yes.
was getting there. And I think did she cry the whole time?
I
feel like I've seen this video because it's gone viral a couple of times.
Yeah.
And I love the fact that he was like, we're not assholes in this family. You know what I mean? Like we are going to be respectful of other people. And then on top of that, he taught her the fact that there's consequences, not just for you, because now I, as your parent, am the one responsible for getting you to school. And this is inconveniencing me, and that we're not going to do either. So there was, I think, a couple of points that he was making. Obviously, the number one being, we do not bully other people.
I have done this. I have done a lot of life lessons to my children that people might think are crazy. I mean, Nick, right? Used to have a pickup. Nick would constantly turn the light on in the truck. Every time he's in the truck, he'd be playing with the light on the top with the switch. And I'd come out and the battery would be dead. Like, damn. So one day he left the light on and he got in the truck and I said, "Nick, touch that." And there were these little glass bulbs and he put his little tiny, 5-year-old or 6-year-old finger on it, and it went tss, and burned the shit out of the tip of his finger. You know what? He never turned that light on again. But he had done it 100 times before that. Mm-hmm. So this is a life lesson. I'm not, I knew he wasn't going to get injured to where, it didn't even blister. It was a little but it scared the shit out of him. And he never turned it on again.
It didn't even blister. I mean, that's a great justification for it, Len.
He also used to sit on his knees in the passenger seat so he could see out the door. I'm like, Nick, you can't sit on your knees. You'd have a seatbelt on. You can't sit on your knees. Why not, Dad? You can't sit on your knees. You're going to fly right out of the seatbelt. No.
The brakes.
Oh, yeah. Right under the dash. Right under the dashboard. That was the end of him sitting on his knees. But, these are life lessons.
Is that what they are?
They're
life lessons according to
I bet
Len.
you he remembers both of them.
Life lessons courtesy of Len.
I bet you he remembers both of those. But, somebody's going to say, oh, you were abusing your child. Now,
They have dinner every Friday together. Just for the record, they have a fantastic restaurant. Fantastic relationship.
Yeah, that's my.
Well, no, but I think though there's also a point to it from a non-parental perspective. If you keep the lines of communication open and then you explain these things later on down the line, and you also convey, love is conveyed in so many ways, right? And I think when we talk about toxicity, I think when we talk about trauma, when these are the buzzwords that I'm sure you've seen under a lot of our clips, right? On social media or under the clips that we look at to get potential topics. I think that there's so many factors that play into that. It's not just the spanking you got that one time that all of a sudden threw you completely off whack and fucked up all of your adult relationships moving forward, right? That's not what that was. There's so many moving pieces that go into it that you can be a disciplinarian and still have a household filled with love and empathy and understanding and communication. Do you understand what I'm saying? And I think that that's what we've lost, is that people think, oh, if you have a parent who chooses to discipline in certain ways, whether it's timeout, whether it's taking things away, whether it's a spanking, if it's a serious enough offense, oh my God, that there's no communication there, that they're closed off, that you're dealing with your own trauma. And it's who's to say you have no idea what else is at play in this household dynamic. And that child can clearly come through it as an incredibly well-rounded, loving, empathetic individual that can then decide when they have their own children, okay, how do I want to discipline my kid? You know what I mean? And hopefully you get to a place where you and Nick or you and your other kids, if something that you ever did was really hurtful, I feel like you guys have a relationship where they would be like, yo, that's the one that stuck out to me and it was fucked up, and if you were to ever have more kids, maybe don't do that. Do you know what I mean? But I think that should be end game, right? That should be the goal, is that, okay, because parents make mistakes too. And it's not to say you did a terrible job. All the incredible things you have done for your kids, you having them go boogie boarding off your passenger seat, I don't think is going to deter or take away from all the amazing things that you have done.
No, I think, I'm very lucky. My kids are good kids, all of them. And I'm very lucky with that. But my two youngest, they got spanked when they were 2 or 3 years old. And now all I have to do is look at them and they know that I'm serious. They also know that if I say I'm throwing your PlayStation out the fucking window, I will throw their PlayStation out the window.
Yeah, I feel like you've evolved past spanking, though. I feel like for you now, I think you, I don't know. I can't really imagine you spanking your children at this point in the game.
No, they're old.
That's what I'm saying. So now if you continue to beat on your child as they get, I think that there's levels to it, and then you have to evolve as they evolve. You know what I mean?
If you whack your kid every time he does something wrong,
it loses its luster, doesn't it?
It has nothing, you're just doing that because you enjoy it. There's a difference, I mean, I told you the time I grabbed Miranda by the mouth and popped her tooth out, that was, that's something she'll never forget. It was a loose tooth. That was something she'll never forget. But, I mean, kids can't control themselves. It's funny, I used to tell Nick as he was growing up, I'm like, one day you're going to go, aha, that's what Dad was talking about when I was 5 years old.
Yeah.
And that's what happens with kids. Every kid will eventually, if you teach them correctly, realize why you said what you said when they were 5, when they were 6, when they were 8, when they were 10. They'll understand it, but they can't until they're adults.
Don't you also think, though, that sometimes your interactions with adults can be actually more traumatizing than your actual your disciplinary actions with them as children?
Absolutely.
Like, do you know what I'm saying? Like, when we talk about relationships, when we talk about the things that kids see beyond just their interaction with you, because if you love your children, I feel like that's conveyed and that comes out. And most parents don't enjoy disciplining their kids, to your point. And there's usually a conversation that comes with it after the fact, right? Like after the tears, like 12 hours later when
Door
they're still,
slamming,
and when we've all healed from it and moved forward, we have the conversation about this is why you can't do things like this, and this is why there has to be punishments and consequences and whatever. But sometimes that interaction, like I wish that we would focus more on that. Like you want to talk about healthy relationships, you want to talk about teaching people how to be good bosses, teaching people how to be leaders. That's not necessarily got anything to do with discipline as much as it has to do with how you interact with and treat other people that are on your level, right?
Yeah, somewhat. I mean, it's kids learn by example.
Mm-hmm. But across the board.
Yeah.
Like they learn how to interact with their friends by also watching their parents interact with their friends. We learn how to be in relationships by seeing the adult relationships around us. So it's kind of like, while we're so concerned with people spanking somebody or sending them to bed without food, maybe let's, worry about that healthy dynamic. Like what else is happening?
It's funny you bring that one up.
Well, what?
Going to bed without food.
Oh, yeah. Well, I told you. One time.
Okay.
Well,
and it's something you remember, isn't it?
Well, no, but I remember because somebody said my mother abused me.
Yes.
And it was one of those things where I was like, do you know me at all? Like, my mother couldn't be any more opposite of that. Like, I mean, I had everything I ever could have possibly wanted in my life. It was a very rare occurrence that she said no. I mean,
but she disciplined you.
Well, yeah, she sent me to bed, but it wasn't even necessary. I went to bed. You know why I went to bed without dinner? Because I was so upset that I had been punished that I cried myself to sleep. Like, I literally cried in one of those fits that toddlers have. And that breathing thing that they do. I choke myself. Then I fell asleep and she just didn't wake me up. And I told that story on the radio. Somebody was like, no food, that's child abuse. And I was just like, oh my God, you're so ridiculous, woman. Like, that was the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard in my life.
I think
that's child
nowadays, child abuse is more not saying no to your children. Not letting your children do whatever they want to do. Mm-hmm. I think that's child abuse. I think that's going to create a disconnect with those kids as adults. I mean, I know some parents that like their kids, I can't take his phone away. I mean, kid has zero social interaction at a party. Where is he? He's sitting on the side of the house on his phone. Why?
Yeah.
Why? You're not forcing your kid to just hang out with his friends or just be sort of social for an hour a day.
Did you even hear what you just said?
It's
like the fact that we're at a place where it's like forcing your kid to hang out with their friends.
Yes.
Like that's so wild.
When you see a kid that can't disconnect from his phone for 15 minutes without losing his shit, that's child abuse. That's child abuse. Mm-hmm. Okay? You letting your kid be on his phone 24/7 is child abuse. Mm-hmm. Because there is nothing that a child should do that much because there's so much more that child needs to learn. Mm-hmm. There's so much more that child needs to experience to become an adult.
Okay, but Len, you sound a little judgy of the parents that do this.
I know.
Because we started off the conversation talking about how everybody wants to say something about
But it's zero discipline. It's like the parents are scared. I mean, this mom is clearly scared to take her son's phone away. Like, when you're a parent and you're scared to do something to your kid because they're going to get upset, that's not parenting.
Yeah, that's odd.
But it happens a lot.
Yeah.
There's a lot, I mean, we were just talking a minute ago about the obesity thing with kids nowadays, and I think that's a form of child abuse. If you can let your kid become unhealthy because you're scared to say something to them, or you
don't want to give them body image.
Yeah, you don't want to give them body imaging issues. I don't care how fucked up you think they're going to be. It doesn't matter. They're not going to live past 40.
Well, not only that. I mean, they're going to be bullied in school.
Yeah, everything.
Going to be the target of
everything.
Ridicule. It's crazy because I came up in a very, I mean, I grew up in the Victoria's Secret Angels, era. I grew up in the 90s supermodel era. Also like that wafy thing. And I can remember literally like getting my period, just becoming a woman and my body changing and having a fit in a dressing room at a JCPenney because I no longer fit in size 0 jeans. My mother comes in, I'm hysterically crying, and she's like, "What is wrong with you?" And I'm like, "I can't fit in the zeros. I'm a 3." And I was like losing it. And she was like, "Oh my, like, what, I don't even know what to say to this right now," right? I had a figure skating coach who was Russian. And if you know anything about Russians and figure, they just mince 0 words. And I was having knee problems. And instead of him saying it was because I was growing, he says, "It's because you're fat." I weighed 75 pounds. Like, I weighed 75 pounds.
Yeah, but were you 5?
No, I was 13.
Okay.
Like, and you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
I was
Well, I mean,
far from
it's
fat.
still the same in gymnastics and any of
Oh,
those.
no, facts. But what I'm saying is, so I think I have a little bit of a, a little bit of a tougher skin, but I can understand where body image issues come from. But I'm also grateful to some degree, and I know that this is going to sound harmful to somebody and possibly put a trigger warning on this, because when it comes to, eating disorders and people that have body image issues, anything can be a trigger. But it is a health issue, right? Like, and we know in this country, like, this is something that we are all, like, majority of our country is clinically overweight, if not clinically obese. So it's not just a children thing. A lot of that is just convenience factor. It's a sedentary lifestyle. Like you said, it's the sitting inside, playing video games, talking on the phone. A lot of us work at sedentary jobs, but it's something that at least I feel like from a child I've been aware of. So with that being said, it's something that I've taken into adulthood, like this awareness of health, wellness. But my family was very kind of, I hate to say it, but we were, physically, like, we were a very, I want to say self-aware, physically aware family. And I don't know that there's, like, today that would be looked down upon,
Yeah, because now it's everything's accepted now.
Yeah.
Everything's accepted. So when you take accepting everything, and if you look at some of this, listen, I understand there's medical reasons for certain things. There's genetics. There's a lot of different factors that go in. But it's also a lot of it is laziness. A lot of it is, convenience. And you're by making it mainstream to be however you want to be, you're damaging our youth and our future adults, some adults already, and our future adults, because you're not guiding these children. I mean, we talked about, when we were growing up, we had the food pyramid
we
and
also
all
had the
that.
presidential physical fitness, test and stuff
like
that, and
physical education.
How many pull-ups can you do? Can you run the mile? Like
now, whoa!
How many
can't
sit-ups?
Make my kids do pull-ups. What do you mean I can't make your kid do pull-ups? No, you can't make my kid do pull-ups. What? On what planet is that okay? I can't spank my 3-year-old on the tush like this without somebody calling DCF on me, but you can take your 200-pound 5th grader and not make him do pull-ups? What's more abusive? What's more abusive?
Yeah.
You're setting your children up to have issues for the rest of their life.
Yeah, it's weird though, because I don't think that that's a global thing.
No, it's not.
This is definitely like an American.
Of course,
this is an American
it's
thing.
bougie.
Like,
It's
well,
a
no.
bougie thing.
And I'm here for self-love, and I want people, especially young women in particular, to love the body that they're in and to love the skin that they're in and to be comfortable and confident. And there are some women that I see on the gram and I'm just like, you know what, honey? I wish I had that level of just self-confidence. But on the flip side of it, to your point, it is about health and wellness and just being conscious of what we're putting in and on our bodies and you know how we speak to ourselves. But yeah, the obesity thing is definitely a very American issue, and a lot of that has to do with, again, socioeconomics. It has to do with
it's the convenience of fast food and all of the crap they put in the
well,
fast
and
food.
the fact that we allow certain things to go in our food.
I get that, and it's very hard to regulate what your children eat and keep
also,
them.
To your point, you love to acknowledge the fact that, you know, the pharmaceutical industry and the healthcare industry is the second, what is it, largest
in the country
enterprise in the country.
Yes.
So it's, you know, it's cyclical. In other places where people walk everywhere, where they eat very local, where they don't allow even a fraction of the chemicals and the additives that we are allowed to put into foods. You know, like if you go to Europe, you eat pretty fresh. You shop at a market almost on a daily basis. Like there's not all of this extra shit in your food. Nothing is frozen and in the freezer. Their refrigerators are like, they're literally the size of our freezer on most of our,
There's chemicals in our food that are banned in other countries.
In most other countries.
Yes.
So.
And okay, so let's just say, fine, we have to deal with the food. That's whatever. Okay, this is all we have to eat. Okay? I guarantee you, because I grew up on McDonald's. We used to go to McDonald's. You know, me and my friends used to ride our bikes to McDonald's.
Treat, though? I feel like McDonald's was a treat for me.
You know, for us it wasn't. There was a McDonald's. So if we wanted to eat in the summer, in the afternoon, if we wanted to have lunch, we had to have $2 and go to McDonald's and get 2 burgers and a fry. That's what we did. But we rode our bikes there. It was about 2 miles away. You know? Yeah. So on one hand, you're saying, you're not going to be able to force my kids to exercise.
Now they're doing Uber Eats.
Yeah. You're not going to be able to force my kids to exercise, but I'm still going to feed them all this crap. So, I mean, there's plenty of healthy people, physically fit people that eat shitty.
Facts.
You know, it's about the discipline of them having to work it off. If you want to eat a milkshake, you know your ass is going to be on the treadmill for an extra hour. You know, that's what it boils down to. And the kids nowadays are not learning this. Yeah,
but to your point though, like if we're going to start throwing around abuse and neglect and everything else, there are certain things that should fall into those same categories. Yeah. So while that person is sitting there pointing the finger at the person that's spanking their child, well, you're abusing or neglecting your child in another way by letting them have early onset diabetes, by letting them have, you know, all these other health issues, high cholesterol at the age of 10. Like, that's wild. Like, you know.
It's nuts.
So I think that you're right. If we're going to sit here and we're going to judge and point fingers and we're going to try to police how other people parent, be very careful, because every time you point one finger at somebody else, you're usually pointing, you know.
Yeah. I mean, the whole walking to school thing, you know, I mean, they obviously have taught their child to be aware. You have to walk to school, but you have to be aware of this. To that child, that's absolutely normal to walk to school.
Yeah. But that I think is the bigger conversation too that we've had now multiple times on this podcast, just talking about how quickly we are, or how quick we are to judge how other people handle situations. Like we talked about even drag brunch, right? And somebody saying, you know, those parents, that's abuse. And it's like, to you, but not to these parents who look at it as art. Like, who are you to tell another parent where they can and cannot take their child for brunch? Like, you know what I'm saying? So you're coming for the restaurant, you're calling people bad parents, they shouldn't be able to do this. But to some parents, that's art. What if they're a part of that community? And I use that just because that was, again, another topic of conversation on the radio. And it's like, how dare you? If you take your child to, what if I take my kid to the ballet?
Yeah.
What if I take my kid to the theater and there's a girl playing a boy
Go see
roller?
M. Butterfly. You know, I mean, it's all, and those parents, I guarantee you, are giving their kids McDonald's or this or that, or letting them stick with their cell phone in their face while they're walking down the street.
Yeah.
It's like, I mean, I don't even like my kids on their phone when they're in their car with me. I think I'm like, hello, pay attention to what's outside. Mm-hmm. Pay attention to the real world, because what you're looking at is not the real world.
Well, yeah. Or like what happens one day when your phone dies and you don't have, Google Maps?
Yeah.
Are you going to be able to find your way home? Do you even know what street?
Actually, Miranda's pretty good at it, which is very good. It's but yeah, that's a handicap. That's a handicap. Is that direction? That's another. You show a kid a map today, and they couldn't tell you what it is. What is that? A map?
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, it's a map. I mean, it's pretty. Dade and Broward County are fairly easy, because it's mostly north, south, east, west.
But to your point, and I think that was what I was going to talk about. So much of parenting, if I'm wrong, please let me know, I feel like is a learned experience, right? Whether it's you learned what you didn't want to do or you learned the good things that your parents did. So, like, how did we get to the, like, it's just very odd to me because I don't know where you know what I'm saying? Like, where did the disconnect happen? Or is this another case of social media just allowing us to be voyeurs into worlds that we wouldn't have otherwise seen before? Do you know what I'm saying? Because it's like, I know how my mom was raised, and I know that a lot of the ways that my mother was raised, she then raised me. A lot of the experiences that I've had are things that her mother made sure she got to do, so my mom just kind of took that and then upped the ante a little bit, right? Like, and so I see that parenting cycle, and I know for me, there's nothing that my mother did, that I would not do if I were to ever have children, aside from possibly making my kid stick with certain things. Like I told you, I was a figure skater up through my sophomore year of high school, and then I just got into that weird space where I was like, I want to be a cheerleader and whatever. And she had invested a lot of time and a lot of money, and instead of just being like, nah, you're going to stick with this until you go to college, you know what I mean? She allowed me to transition out of it. And not that I was not still active. I was on swim team. I was a cheerleader. I was a lifeguard. I worked 3 jobs. Like, it wasn't that I just stopped doing stuff, but there's a part of finishing things that I never, that I feel like that kind of limited me on, in the sense of, there's a commitment to something. When you commit yourself to it, you see it through till the end, right? Also, I was very gifted when I was younger as far as academics go. Like, I could wait till the last minute to do stuff. That changes when you get to the collegiate level, when you're going for an MBA. Like, it's difficult to write a 30-page paper in 6 hours. It doesn't matter. Like, you can write the best paper ever. It's just not, it's physically.
Not anymore. You just tell AI what you want. It gives it to you.
It's wild. But you understand what I'm saying? Like, so things like that, instead of like learning to budget time, when you have a skill set, I think as a parent sometimes, even if your child is gifted, you have to point out, like, listen to me. Don't take that gift for granted. Like, you still need to learn certain things because you put undue pressure on yourself.
Yeah, these are the things.
Excuse me.
These are the things, everybody's quick to point out, physical abuse,
but
verbal
she's an incredible
abuse.
Mother.
There's always these things, I mean, every part about it. No, you can't go out tonight because you have to do your homework.
Yeah.
Is it done? I mean, this much of being involved in your child's school life, this much, knowing what your children have to do, the ability to log into their backpack, which almost every kid has nowadays. The parent can log in and see what's due or what's not due.
Yeah, everything is kind of
just making sure the teacher has your email. I mean, there's just these little things are very important, and if you don't do them, then you can't keep your kids on track.
Yeah.
And I'm a firm believer in, if you start something, you want to do something, you want to play volleyball. Miranda wanted to play softball. You want to play softball? No problem. You're playing softball. You're playing the season.
Yeah.
It's that simple. You start.
Yeah, you got to
I'll
finish
support
it.
you. You got to finish it.
Yeah.
And that's very important.
Yeah.
That's
facts.
That's teaching kids to, and that's really, everybody's got this anti-college thing, and I don't care if my kids go to college or they don't go to college.
It's a commitment.
Yes, I care if they are focused and learn and work, College is teaching you how to complete a task.
And how to network if you're smart.
It's more about teaching you to transition from high school where you can get away with shit to, the real world where you can't get away with anything.
And I also think it gives you, kind of it's kind of like a flash course, you know what I mean? Like in a bunch of things, depending on what kind of school you go to, it can also, open your mind. And I'm not talking about necessarily with different ideologies, but just things that you might have never known you were interested in.
Yes.
Like you didn't necessarily take philosophy in high school, but all of a sudden you get there and you're like, oh, that's dope. Or maybe you take an art history class and you're like, holy shit, this is amazing. Like, so that's college is great for kind of helping you. It's literally all you're doing for 4 years is figuring out what the fuck you want to be when you grow up. Yeah. Hopefully.
I also think it should be free. I still think there should be schools that you have to pay for. And, it is what it is. If you can afford it, you can do it. But I think everybody should have the option.
State school should be. We talked about
that. That's,
at length.
So back to disciplining your kids. It's, everybody's pointing fingers at everybody else about what they're doing wrong with their kids. People are going to come at me about making Nick touch that light. Okay, come at me. Talk to him about it. You can come at me however you want. That's my parenting style. That's what I believe in. I never hit my kids out of anger. I never, I never gave them undue punishment. And that's just my style. And everybody's got their own style. But you're coming at me, show me your perfect child. Show me your parent, your kids, whatever. Show me your perfect kid.
I just have a problem with the fact that everybody thinks their way is the right way. And that's the bigger issue to me when you start trying to impose your way onto somebody else. And that's even like what we're seeing in our school system with clearing out all of the books, all of them. 1.6 million titles now have to be vetted and approved by an already understaffed, underserved, and severely, severely taxed public school system. But whatever.
For what?
And this is my point. Like, but again, to your point,
go back to sticks and stones.
No, but being this much engaged in your child's life, if a book comes home in their backpack that you don't approve of, what do? Give me this. You're not reading this. Right? Like, be engaged. Instead, you want everybody, what you really want is the responsibility to be taken off of your plate, to be involved and to parent, and you want to put it on somebody else's and go, just wipe it all out. Make it easy on me. Just take everything away. Right? Like, and that to me is wild because there's another parent out there who has no problem with their child learning about certain things or maybe, being exposed to Lord of the Flies or The Handmaid's Tale or whatever the case may be. Right? So, and on top of that, these are free books. This is access to free literature. That's the other thing that was a part of the public school system. And that's what's sad to me is that there are some families out there that can't afford to have their own personal libraries. Right? And so that's why teachers spent so much time asking for book donations and building up their own, classroom libraries, even we're talking about kindergartners and first graders and second graders, because there's parents out there that can't afford to buy books like that for their kids.
If a generation of kids grew up on a book, there should be nothing wrong with it for the next generation.
And not to mention, you get new authors, and maybe those authors fade away or whatever, but it should be the choice of the readers, and then on the parent to then decide if something in that book sparks a conversation. Like I told you, one of my favorite authors ever was Roald Dahl when I was growing up. Matilda, BFG, James and the Giant Peach, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. So many books that have been made into big movies that people love. A biography just came out about Roald Dahl, and apparently he was a big anti-Semite, which we obviously do not agree with or support. I never picked up on any of that in his books. I maybe should go back and read them as an adult and see if it's in there. But I know that they've started rewriting or scrubbing some of his classics for words like fat and ugly and heavy. And it's ironic because my mom and I were talking about this. And like I said, I still, to this day, she literally just bought me a Roald Dahl box set. Because I read to kids sometimes, or I do different things for the library. And just to have. But she was like, when we were talking about it, they were never used by the protagonist, right? They were always used by the bad guy. They were always used by the bully. So it was very clear that the person that was hurling fat and ugly in this was not the nice person, right? So if you're talking about teaching moral lessons in a book, as a kid, you were like, oh, that's the meanie, that's the bully. Those are the words that the that the mean guy uses, right? And then on top of that, as an adult, if you're reading these books to your kids, that's the conversation that you get to have as a parent. Like these are hurtful, harmful words. We don't use these words.
They're tools.
Yeah, you don't need to take them out of our language in order to point out like that these are this and this is why, right? And that's always, I thought, been a part of adulting and parenting and teaching and educating and all of those things. And I also feel like it's a testament to progress, right? Like if you start canceling all of these movies that don't age well, right? Like I told you, they tried to cancel Grease at one point in time. There's not enough diversity in that movie. It was supposed to be shot in the 50s. Do you know what America was like in the 50s, guys? There wasn't a whole lot of diversity.
It's called a period piece.
Do you know what I'm saying? Like, oh, and then there was, homophobic, whatever. Do you remember like the two greasers are dancing together and they come, like they're joking around and they're like, break it up. And it's like, okay, so we've made progress, guys. Again, this was supposed to be in the 50s. It was shot in the late 70s. But if you wipe that out, then you lose the progress that we've made. You lose the point of reference, right?
Yes.
And that's the scary part about what we're doing. But again, there are parents out there who are so opposed to these words. And I'm like, it doesn't matter if you scrub them from every book on the planet. There's still an adult out there that's going to call somebody fat. There's still somewhere out there where
what are you going to tell somebody if they're fat? What do you say to them?
You're overweight. They're heavy set. I mean, I get your point, but I'm just saying, like, so again, use it for what it's worth, right? And then you raise your child. Like my mother hated the phrase "shut up." We did not use "shut up." Like she'd be like, "Please be quiet." Like you're talking a lot, but don't say "shut up." That was her thing.
Wasn't that a choice? Wasn't that a choice that your mother made?
Yes, and that's my point. Yes. Facts, but that's what I'm saying. You use these opportunities to have those conversations with your young kids. If you take them away from it, now not only have they not come to you for this conversation, but they're still going to hear it, and then now how is it applied, right? Like I don't know. I just feel like it's counterproductive.
Yes. The what did we say? The bitchification? We gotta get rid of pussification.
Oh yeah.
Gotta get rid of pussification.
I don't know.
Bitchification of America. We're raising a bunch of kids that a bunch of people are raising. I shouldn't just say kids because a lot of them are adults now that have very, very thin skin when it comes to someone talking. I saw a video the other day of this at a hockey game. This kid was like getting up in this 40-something-year-old white guy's face, just like acting all tough and screaming and yelling. I mean, he was about this far away from him. Little skinny ass kid. And the guy just went, knocked him out cold. And that's
life.
That's what it should be. The only kids that are using any kind of the language to bully are kids that didn't necessarily have a great upbringing or a great set of parents.
Hurt people. Yeah.
And they're projecting it. But to take kids that have good parents and take this out of their life, you're setting them up for like the largest fall in their. You're setting them up to be weak adults.
Well, and we don't live in a utopian society. It's not
no,
perfect. And
your kids might run into me.
Yeah, there are mean people. There are hateful people. There are hurt people that are going to say mean things. And if you haven't given your child the tools with which to deal with that, and if they never face it,
child abuse,
how do they have the tools to deal with it? Like, so yes, I definitely 100% agree. And
people don't see these consequences. The only thing they see as abuse is something that bothers them. Something that bothers them. This kid used to call me fat when I was a little kid and I was... Okay. So teach your children to never bully another kid. Teach your children this is not the right thing to do. Okay? But don't try and eliminate the word that upset you when you were 8 years old. Get the fuck over it.
Well, yeah, or explain to why you don't use this word in your house. It made mommy feel very bad about herself. It made daddy feel small. Like
I've had to go through it now that both my teenagers are in high school together, because they're in different groups, you know. Joey's in with all the athletes, and Miranda's, you know, the smart kid over here. Da, da, da. They're both both honor roll kids, but, you know, they're in different cliques, you know. And I had to tell Joey, you got to be nice to your fucking sister. And I tell your sister, you got to be nice to Joey. You know, you guys are, no, I don't care who your friends are. You guys are siblings. You need to be nice to each other. Yeah. In the hallway and wherever.
Sounds like the Breakfast Club.
It is what it is, but it's very, very prevalent. Yeah. You know, and.
Well, here's the deal, though. That's never going away.
No.
Right? Cliques, this has been a part of human society. It's a part of human nature, behavior. People will congregate. People will be drawn to people who they either aspire to be like.
Give your kids the tools to deal with this, because it's inevitable that they're going to run into it.
And encourage them to be chameleons to some degree. Encourage them to fit in and befriend everybody.
Yes.
Because that, to me, is the greatest gift that you can give anybody. A person who can feel comfortable in any social setting is literally limitless. The person who can walk on any side of 95, that can be in any hood, can be at a black tie, 5-star event, you know what I'm saying, and sit down and feel comfortable and confident in their conversation with anybody. My God, how powerful is that, right?
Yes. It's the truth. I mean, so all of you parents out there that are pointing the finger, why don't you sit back and look? Yeah. And say, what am I doing that might be damaging my child's future? Because that's really what it boils down to.
Or take the good. Like, take the lesson out of what you see other parents doing. But the level of judgment amongst people has got to stop. And please stop trying to impose your way of life or your values onto everybody carte blanche across the board, because what works in your household may not work for somebody else. And it's not, I don't think, like I said, a fair course of action. I don't know. It's just, it's a lot. And
you parents that are fighting to get all this shit taken out of books that we all grew up on, and we're all here. And, you know, I mean, granted, there's some bad people in this world, and there's a lot of good people in this world. But we all grew up on those books. We all grew up on all that stuff. We all grew up on different things. And that's what makes us, you know, that's what makes the progress, like Kimmy was saying. Why don't you turn your focus on getting fucking physical education back in schools and getting your kids off their fucking fat asses and their phones and getting active?
Have the conversations with them. Like, if you're so concerned with what they're being taught and all of the rest of it, take a little initiative.
Teach them how to deal with it.
Have the conversations with them. Be involved. Talk to them about their schoolwork. To your point, don't just let them sit on their iPad or their phone, which, like I said, I've seen on numerous occasions. They come in a stack of electronic devices.
You can't take it away. If you take away the electronics that children have today, you're handicapping them in a certain way to a certain extent, because they're not going away. Electronics are not going away. They're only getting more complicated and more intrusive into your life. So I'm not an advocate for taking them away, but what you're allowing the electronics to take away is your children's health, your children's physical activity, your children's ability to.
But Lenny, they have to be active
to be with other people.
Like, that's the other problem. We talk about parenting though, and that trickles down. Like, you get up every day, you walk at 6 a.m. Your daughter will sometimes do that with you, especially in the summer, right? Like, so you're creating that time with her, and you're showing her by example. Unfortunately, in this country, like, it's difficult to tell your kid to get off their fat ass and go outside and play, and they're looking at you like you've been sitting there, you know.
That's why physical education used to be in schools.
Couponing.
I didn't have anybody doing it for me. I didn't have it. I had to go to PE every fucking day.
Yeah.
You want to get out of PE, you got to, like, limp out onto the court and da-da-da-da. And the coach will still make you sit in the corner and do one-handed push-ups or some shit. Yeah. You know, you couldn't get out of it. Yeah. Kids, no, I'm not dressing that way. You crazy? I'm not. No, I'm not going to PE. I don't feel like it.
Yeah, I mean, but I just think it's a part. Again, I think this is a very American problem. And I think that we just have a lot of lazy people across, like we said. But like you said, you had to ride your bike to the McDonald's 2 miles in order to enjoy that treat that it was for you. Yeah. Now we have Uber Eats, we have Postmates. So when we talk about the shit that's on kids' phones, like, literally they've got Krispy Kreme, Dunkin', McDonald's, whatever. Like, so again, when we talk about teaching your kids how to make, there's so many facets to that, the importance of being in your child's life. And if you can't do it, you should be allowing other people, like whether it's teacher, again, there's just, when you think about the domino effect of where we're at, especially in this state, teachers can't teach in a multitude of ways. Like, so it's not just about whatever was in Don't Say Gay. And I'm not even bringing that up. I'm saying, like, as a teacher right now, I'd be afraid to talk to a child about their weight. Like, do you know what I'm saying? I would be afraid to have that conversation and be like, hey, buddy, why don't we get healthy? Like, are you walking? What do you want to do? Like, because God forbid they go home and they tell their parent, and now parent might know their kid has a weight issue, but they just feel offended that you felt that you had the right to insert yourself. And that used to be what teachers did. It used to be what coaches did. It used to be what Girl Scout leaders or Boy Scout leaders, like it was a village. There used to be this respect that you had for other people, whether it was your best friend in the neighborhood's mom, like she could have been like, Lenny, no more McDonald's.
I can remember her very vividly saying, don't swear in my house.
But
from the other room, like I'd be in my friend's room hanging out. We'd be doing something, and I'd say something, and I'd hear her from the kitchen. Don't swear in my house.
But like you also, your parent, but again, I feel like back then you had these relationships with people where you could be like, hey, by the way, when he's at your house, do me a favor, don't let him eat a whole pizza, or like don't let him. Now somebody's gonna get offended by that. Oh, you're telling me how to whatever. Like, well, then don't let him come over. And it's just like, to your point, it's not just the kids that are sensitive. You have a generation of parents now that are also sensitive. How did that happen though? I don't get it, because it's like.
What?
Len, who were they raised by? Yeah, but no, millennials, yes, but their millennial parents are you. This is the weird thing about it. Like,
sort of. My Nick is going to be a parent probably in the next 5-6 years.
Yeah. I mean, Nick is already, and Nick could have easily
by the time
already
he's
been
in his
a parent.
30s, by the time he's in his 30s, he's going to be a parent. I don't think he's going to be withholding. It's hard for me to look outside and see where all these people are coming from, and I think they've always been there. Mm-hmm. It's just now they have a voice that's pushing it on everybody else. They have, and I think there's probably, I don't understand why we don't have physical education in school. I just don't. I cannot fathom that. Why? What's the downside to it? Our state has plenty of money for schools. Mm-hmm. Plenty. That's what the whole lottery was for. For the schools.
Yeah.
So how come we don't have physical education? Why did that come out of the curriculum? I mean, here's the even more perplexing part. We don't know why or when it happened.
Yeah.
That's the more.
Well, again, it clearly wasn't voted on, or because I would think that you would have remembered that being on a bill somewhere.
No, I don't remember it. I don't remember it at all.
But that's what's happening, though, with education in general. There's a lot of decisions that are being made for people that are never getting to the people to vote on. And I told you that's where I have the big issue, is that very important decisions are made when it comes to, public education in particular, that never comes down to the people that it impacts directly, which is us, the voters.
If you, and I'm not saying, allow teachers to beat kids, but I'm just saying, if you allow teachers to go back to disciplining kids in certain ways, sit in the corner. It's this. Mm-hmm. You have to work by yourself today. You have,
Well, did you see the situation? I think I told you about it with the young girl who literally got into a physical altercation with her teacher, and the teacher ended up in the hospital with a broken leg and everything else. And literally the kids were sitting in the classroom videotaping it and like laughing. And we had the conversation in our studio, and none of us could understand or fathom, because when I was in school, somebody in that classroom would have stood up and as a student, and told her to sit her ass down. Not the teacher, the kid that was acting a fool, because you just had respect for people. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, and these kids all just sat there laughing, and it was wild.
Back to zero consequences.
Yeah.
Zero consequences. Why would kids even be allowed to take their phones into a classroom?
Yeah.
Why? What do they need their phone in the classroom for? So it's funny because, private schools, they like to feel like they're progressive. They tried it. They tried to implement the phone into the curriculum because every kid has one. So why not implement it? And didn't really work out.
Yeah.
You know, now all the rest of the classes, they have to put the phone in a...
Well, the unfortunate thing is, and now we're at this place where we have a mass shooting every other week. And so that's usually the grounds for why parents feel they want their children to have their phones in the classroom with them.
That's,
but that's another. But that again, that's a bigger conversation.
That's
why are we not investing more in making our schools safer?
Yes, I mean, you know, it's funny because it all boils down to education, but it all boils down to parents who are offended by a teacher disciplining their children. You know, your kids have if someone has no consequences, I guarantee you they're not going to stop doing something. You know, you're going to get people pushing the envelope. The less consequences you have, you see them, 200 motorcycles, 200 not street legal motorcycles, driving down, holding up traffic, doing all kinds of crazy shit, which, hey, when I was a kid, yeah, I rode my dirt bike on the street and but I didn't get on 95 and hold up traffic or, I ran from the cops. They don't have any fear of the cops. They don't have any fear of anything happening to them. So, so when you say you're in traffic and you see that kid on the motorcycle holding up traffic and you're like, I gotta go, that's your fucking fault, buddy. That's your fault because you're taking the power away from the people who give the discipline, starting from the teachers, through the police, through everybody. Because everybody wants to cry.
That's a much bigger conversation.
But it's the truth. But it starts in school. It starts in school.
Yeah.
Your kindergartner, if they are acting out, should have to sit in the fucking corner.
They can't put kids in timeout anymore.
Really, Kimmy? This is like a whole thing.
No. But I told you, though, on the flip side of it, you also have parents who are just not engaged. Because I told you, I was principal for a day at a school, and I was having a conversation with the teachers, and they said they had one child who they had to call the police on. This is an elementary school I was at. They had to call the cop on him. They called the mother, asked her to come to the school to pick up her son, and she was like, sorry, I can't make it right now. They were like, ma'am, then you will have to pick him up at the police station. She gets there. She had been at the gym. She was literally working out at the gym, and that was what was keeping her from coming and getting her son, who the school had to call the police on, right? And she came, and she acted like they were inconveniencing her. And they were like, it's wild. These are the same parents who literally drop their children off, not potty trained. I have to teach their kid not to poop on the middle of my kindergarten floor. But if I try to discipline them, if I put them in the corner, then all of a sudden I'm being called into my principal's office and how dare you speak to my child that way? Like literally your child was taking a dump on my rug. And I'm being the parent. I'm teaching them I'm potty training your kids in kindergarten, yet I can't put them in timeout when they bite or slap or steal something from another child. Like this is... Again, it's wild.
Zero consequences.
But it's also zero consequences for the parents. Like this parents don't like, do you understand? It's like on one hand, you're like, here, again, like I said, it's that laziness. Take all the responsibility away from me for parenting, right? You teach them how to, that's your job. Teach them how to
throw those kids out of public school.
Potty train them.
Throw them
but then on the flip side of them, you're not their parent, I'm their parent. You see it's wild. The same people are talking out of both sides of their faces, and I don't get it. It's like, do you want to be parents or do you not want to be parents? Like, do you want people to have responsibility? Do you believe it takes a village? Or is it just you, only you, and that, you know what I'm saying? Like, I don't know. It's weird to me. Get it together, people. You're sending mixed messages.
Yep.
Because you're not always going to agree with how somebody else does something, but it doesn't make their way of doing it wrong. And that's the problem, is that, you know what I mean? Sometimes it's why we have this podcast, right? Like, I may not always agree with you, but if I take the time to see where you're coming from, I may understand it a little bit better, right? Like, that's just life in general.
The dark side.
Just not the dark side, Len. You're not always on the dark side, and neither am I. I'm just saying it's like, take a step, take a beat before you have this, automatic knee-jerk reaction to things and demand this change that could lead to major repercussions. Like you said, we had this whole movement, in the 80s or the 90s with discipline, right? When DCFS and kids knew to call. And now, to your point, what are we seeing? Generations of kids with no boundaries, a generation of kids with no fear of authority, with no respect. So all of those phone calls and, that whole, empower your children to stick up for themselves. Look at where it's led us. Yes, has it probably saved a couple of kids? Has it probably gotten, a few kids out of really bad situations? And you always want that.
Of course.
You know what I mean? But it's also doing a major disservice to a bunch of others.
Yeah, I think Nick threatened me with that once. I'm like, fucking call.
Yeah.
Make the call.
Well, and to your point, like, what does that look like? I mean, you're here, you have a roof over your head, you have clean clothes, you've got food in the refrigerator, parents that pick you up and drop you off that are working, you have insurance, like all of these things. Like,
yeah.
Because why did you call your dad? He yelled at me. You know what I'm saying? Like it's
he's abusing me.
It's wild. But if you fall for the threat, like if you back off when they do that, and you stop yelling.
Yeah. Well,
I don't know.
Consequences.
I know, Len, but like
my kids have them.
Yeah.
Every kid should, and I think schools should be again. You guys want to fight for something? Somebody please reach out and tell me why they took physical education out of schools. Just please tell me why. I don't understand. And arts programs. They killed a lot of arts programs.
And that's extremely detrimental.
So,
we know that.
Just tell me why we had to take this out of our school.
Or how about this? Don't even tell me why. Show me the negative correlate. Like, you know what I mean? Let's start talking about that. Since we've done these things, what have we seen an increase in? Violence. Obesity, mass shootings. Like, I mean, when you start talking about these things, because no offense, who's to say that some of these kids wouldn't have been in an art class giving hints as to what was going on inside of it? Do you understand what I'm saying?
Or out on the field working out some of their fucking frustrations.
But do you see what I'm saying? Like there are things that there's many reasons why extracurriculars are beneficial. You know what I'm saying? It gives people an insight into what's going on.
And they weren't even extracurricular when I grew up. They were mandatory.
Well, PE definitely was. Was art?
Art was when I grew up.
It was, actually. Yeah. Because I was terrible at art.
Yeah, but it's fine motor skills. Mm-hmm. You learn with art. There's a lot of things you learn with art.
Mm-hmm. Patience. You learn how to be bad at something.
Yeah, I mean, listen.
For me, I learned how to be bad at something.
There's a lot of different things. So it's these are the things we need to look at. Everyone who's out there screaming about you're abusing your kid, you shouldn't do that, you shouldn't do this. You guys really all need to get together and look at the fucking core of what's going on here. Our kids are not getting the education they deserve in public schools, and the teachers aren't getting the support that they deserve in public schools.
Facts. And the majority of our kids are educated in public schools, despite many folks would like to believe.
I would bet it's 95% of the kids.
If you talk to people who are privileged enough to be able to put their children in private school and you ask them, if we had to take something away, what would you be okay with us taking away? Would you be okay with us taking away language? Absolutely not. Would you be okay with us taking away art? Absolutely not. Would you be okay with us taking away physical education? Absolutely. Like, they've done this. There's a guy, Jeffrey Canada, who started the Harlem Children's Zone, whatever. It's from cradle to college. That was his whole mantra. And he used to love bringing in wealthy people and having this conversation. Well, okay, let's talk about when they're, at this age, what's important here. Well, you can't. No, you really, that's the most important time when they're, 3 and under. My God, that's when you need to be reading to them. You need to be speaking to them. And he just used to sit back because he'd be like, yeah, and look at what's happening in our public education system. And it was such an eye-opening, kind of conversation to have with him. And it's true, but majority of our children are educated in the public school system. And to Lenny's point, we are thoroughly failing them in the things that parents are flipping out about right now and making it difficult for good teachers to teach and making it even more difficult for our kids to have access to educate. Like, you've heard the latest, they want to take away the AP courses.
It's ridiculous.
They save kids money on college. You know what I mean?
Yeah, they want a bunch of overweight, illiterate people in this country.
That's the bigger conversation.
That's but that's what we're going to end on, I think.
Yeah. Well, because that'll food for thought.
We'll pick that up again.
Food for thought. Why are they okay dismantling the public education system? There you go. All right. Well, that was episode 44, ManTFup podcast. Like, subscribe, share, follow. Leave your comments. I'm sure you've got plenty to say. Obviously, please follow us on TikTok. Follow us on Instagram. Follow us on YouTube. I know we put up shorts there. We're under a new handle on YouTube, yes?
It's ManTFup podcast.
ManTFup podcast. So you can find us there for sure. And of course, we'll be back next week if you have any suggestions. If you'd like to be a part of the podcast, maybe you're an educator, you're a person who works in the health and wellness sphere, you're a parent that's just got something to say, we would absolutely, love for you to reach out. Yeah. There you go. We're out.
Peace.